Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Humanitarian Horizons. I am Christina DiArcangelo. And today I'm going to talk about something that I had actually received a request to be able to shoot a podcast about. Something that I believe the world needs a little bit more as of right now: humility, prayer, and what truly it means to walk with God. When we live in a time when so much of the world celebrates noise, ego, and self promotion, everywhere we look, there's so much pressure to prove ourselves, defend ourselves, elevate ourselves, and sometimes even dominate others. But the spiritual path is very different from the world's path. Walking with God is not about elevating ourselves above others. It is actually about lowering ourselves enough to be able to hear Him. And that begins with humility. Humility is often misunderstood. Many people think that humility means weakness or thinking less of yourself. But true humility is actually strength. It is clarity. It is knowing who you are, but also recognizing that you are not the center of the universe. Humility means understanding that every gift we have, our intelligence, our opportunities, our talents, and even our breath are blessings that come from something greater than ourselves. When we live humbly, we stop trying to control everything. We begin to listen. And listening is where prayer begins. Prayer is not a performance. It is not something that needs to be perfect. It's not something that needs to be polished. Prayer is simply a conversation with God. Sometimes it is gratitude. Sometimes it is confusion. Sometimes it is pain. And sometimes it is silence. One of the greatest misunderstandings about prayer is that people think we need to say the right things or follow the right structure. But the truth is, prayer begins with honesty. You can speak to God exactly as you are. You can pray when you're joyful. You can pray when you're angry. You can pray when you're lost. And perhaps the most powerful prayers are the most simplest ones. God, help me. God, guide me. God, give me the wisdom. God, show me what I cannot see. Prayer is not about convincing God to do something for us. Prayer is always about aligning ourselves with Him. It's about quieting our own voices long enough to hear His. I know this is something I suffer from a lot, where I just keep thinking about things in my head, about whatever it is that's bothering me, and I just keep going and going and going in my head. So when I do that, I stop myself because I realize I'm cycling in this, whatever this is that I'm worried about moment, when I really need to stop and just talk to God. And by talking to God, we're actually praying. Again, it is about quieting our own voices long enough to hear His. I'm saying that again. And that leads to the third part of today's conversation: walking with God. Walking with God is not something that happens only on Sundays or during moments of a crisis. It is something that happens in the quiet decisions of everyday life. It is choosing patience when anger feels easier. It's choosing compassion when judgment feels more comfortable. It's choosing integrity when no one else is watching. It's deciding not to play the blame game because we know that God is watching. So, what are we going to achieve by blaming others when He is watching? Walking with God means asking yourself in the middle of the day, am I acting in a way that reflects the values I claim to believe in? Because faith is not something we speak about, it is something we live. And often, the most spiritual moments in our lives do not happen in churches or temples or otherwise. They happen in the most ordinary places. They happen when we forget or forgive someone who's hurt us. They happen when we help someone who cannot repay us. They happen when we choose kindness instead of cruelty. Humility, prayer, and walking with God are deeply connected. Humility opens our hearts. Prayer connects our hearts. And walking with God transforms our hearts. But none of these things happen overnight. Spiritual growth is not a single moment of enlightenment. It is a long, lifelong journey. It is the longest journey that you'll probably ever be on in your lifetime, honestly. There will be times when we feel very close to God, but there will be times in chaos when we feel very, very distant from God. There will be moments of clarity and moments of doubt, and that is part of the journey. Faith does not mean never questioning. Faith means continuing to seek, continuing to listen, continuing to walk forward, even when the roads are uncertain. And sometimes the most powerful spiritual practice can be that we are just simply slowing down. I just did that in that sentence, just started to slow down because spiritual practice is about slowing down. In a world that constantly tells us to move faster, achieve more, prove ourselves, do this, do that, instead of choosing the time to pause and act in faith. When we pause, we create space, space to reflect, space to pray, space to hear the quiet voice of wisdom that often gets drowned out by the loudness of the world. If there's one thing I've learned in my life, it is that humility does not shrink you. It centers you. Prayer does not make you passive. It strengthens you. And walking with God does not make life easier, but it makes life more meaningful. Because when we walk with God, we are reminded that we are not alone. We are part of something greater than our individual struggles and successes. We are part of a story that is bigger than our own ambitions. And when we remember that, something beautiful happens. We begin to treat others differently. We begin to live differently. Humility makes us better leaders. Prayer makes us wiser decision makers. And walking with God reminds us that every person that we meet carries their own struggles, their own hopes, and their own sacred worth. And in a world that often feels divided, that reminder matters more than ever. So today, wherever you are in your journey, whether you are deeply connected to your faith or whether you are still searching, I invite you to take a moment of humility, a moment of prayer, a moment of reflection. You do not need the perfect words. You only need an open heart. It begins with listening. Thank you for joining me today on Humanitarian Horizons. Until next time, may you lead with humility, speak with compassion, walk with purpose, and may your steps always be guided by something greater than yourself. Thank you. This has been Christina DiArcangelo and Humanitarian Horizons. Bye bye for now.